Welcome to r/LetsNotMeet, where people share some of their creepiest encounters with members of the human race. Chased by strange people in the woods with a large bag. DL, Doctor, got lost in the backwoods and came across 4 hooded men dragging a human-sized bag into the woods. They started chasing our car. So I'm new to Reddit and I found this sub and I think this story fits here. I've had a number of odd frightening experiences in the woods since I'm a huge outdoors guy and pretty much outside all the time I can manage it. One of these experiences I tried posting here but it got rejected. I thought this one would sound too far-fetched but after reading some other stories on here I decided I'll post it. So this happened when I was much younger, I want to say freshman in high school. Probably like 2008. There used to be this road near where I lived in CA called Crook Road. It was barely a road. No one traveled on it and it was surrounded by small patches of forest and some abandoned barns and houses. I would typically go there with my friends to skateboard and hang out. This one night I was hanging out with 2 of my friends, Lucas and Dorian, and someone wanted to go to Crook Road to hang out since it was creepy at night. It might sound lame but we loved exploring like a bunch of 5th graders and weren't really into smoking or anything, so what else was there to do? I asked my 20-year-old brother James if he could drive us down into one of the nature reserves by the road. This specific reserve was larger than the others and had a network of gravel paths leading through it. Basically we were looking for unexplored territory to hike in. Soon one particular path we were traveling down had become so narrow James's Ford Explorer couldn't pass through it, so we got out and walked for a while, chatting and just having fun. We walked through the woods for about half an hour until it had gotten relatively dark out and the sun was gone. At which point we turned around to head back to the car. It's now I should mention that despite being near a lot of subdevelopments, this patch of forest was huge, I'd say about 1,000 acres, and rarely visited since it was easy to get lost in. Especially at night. It was a challenge getting the car turned around but James managed it and we were off down the road. Dorian proposed we turn down a different path we had passed by earlier since we had about another 40 minutes until our parents wanted us back, and we agreed. Down this path was a tiny pond Dorian wanted to check out to take pictures of since he hadn't gotten the opportunity to visit it at night. It was slow going since this road was even crappier than the main one we were traveling on that turned off of Crook Road. Minutes later, we got into a slight argument. Dorian was convinced James had taken a wrong turn since we should have arrived at the pond by now, while James claimed that he had been driving straight the whole time. It was dark after all. Eventually we came to a fork in the road that none of us were familiar with. None of us knew which way to go, so we ended up guessing and going left, hoping that both directions would ultimately lead back to the main path. None of us were scared or anything, in fact we were actually excited and intrigued. Driving through seemingly the middle of nowhere at night, it was at this point we rounded a small bend in the road and the headlights fell upon a surreal sight. There was 4 figures emerging from the forest and crossing the road, wearing what looked to be long cloaks with the hoods up and holding flashlights. One guy at the back of the group was dragging a large duffel bag. A human-sized duffel bag. We all froze and stopped mid-conversation, and as soon as our high beams landed on the 4 figures, they froze as well. James pulled to the left and went around them. Driving past them felt like an eternity because we couldn't have been going over 5 miles per hour due to the shitty condition of the road. Sitting in the passenger seat, I could see them inches beyond my window, and they were indeed wearing black robes and holding flashlights. I didn't get a good look at the bag, but judging by the way the guy was holding it, something heavy was inside the bag. None of us said a word until the road straightened out and we were far past these guys. At which point James just muttered, "What the hell was that?" We continued down the road in silence until I heard Lucas say "holy shit" and repeat himself in a louder, panicked voice. He said, "They're fucking coming back." I twisted around in my chair to see Lucas pointing out the back window. I could barely see anything but about 100 yards away we saw the beams of 4 flashlights shaking erratically. The guys were without a doubt running after us. All of us screamed at James to floor it and he sped down the road. The car was bouncing and shaking uncontrollably as we flew over berms and potholes. I kept my eyes on the flashlight beams until we rounded another bend in the road and they were out of sight. Thankfully the path did manage to take us back to the main path. James gunned it down the path until we popped off by Crook Road and got the hell out of there. The weirdest thing about it was, there couldn't have been a vehicle anywhere near those guys for 50 miles in either direction. We would have seen one if there had been. We had explored most of the area before, and there wasn't anywhere to pull off the road and park. We didn't say anything more until we were back at my place. We talked about it for a bit and then my friends went home and James and I went to bed. I didn't know if we should call the cops or not, but James, who I guess would be the adult in the situation, seemed reluctant, so I dropped it. I never told my parents until just before writing this and they kind of scolded me for not telling them and that we should have contacted the authorities just to report suspicious people in the preserve. I still wish to know how the hell they got there, where they were going, and what was in the bag. That was r/LetsNotMeet. If you don't subscribe right now, you will have a creepy encounter tomorrow.